You write about the fact that most of the most influential, heroic people that have lived before us and have gone are no longer spoken about. They're not remembered, despite being so tremendously influential in their time. Why is that an important thing for us to think about?
Marcus Aurelius in the Meditations, there's a paragraph where he says something to the effect of, all of this for a year on the calendar. And I think what he meant, this great Roman emperor and philosopher, I think what he meant was, these kings, these emperors, they conquered and they did so much so they could have their name, a year named after them. And in modern society, we strive and we struggle and we have all this ambition so we can have our name on a bestseller list or social media feed or hospital wing or TV show. But I think it's a trap. I think it's an illusion, because we all end up as dust. And as you mentioned from that chapter in the book, how many of the great kings and queens, how many of the great business titans who were revered at the time do we still talk about? Not that many. And so I think the philosophical point is we really don't matter that much. And I hope I say that properly. Doesn't mean we shouldn't respect ourselves. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be ambitious. There's a lot in this book on elite performance, productivity, building great business.
Yeah, it's not about diminishing your self-worth.
No, not diminishing our self-worth, or even being in the world and operating in a way that's productive, et cetera, et cetera. But it's the proverb that I mentioned earlier, be in the world, but not of the world. Do amazing things in the world. Be a great human being. Build great businesses or empires of creativity. Have a wonderful family life. Run a marathon. Do amazing things. But see, that's all just fleeting. And our lives, even a long life, is a very short ride. So just, if you can have intimacy with that idea, even every day, by prayer, meditation, journaling, conversation, then I think you're not going to take yourself too seriously.
Continuing with this theme of death, not to be too morbid, but you finish the book with living fully so you can die empty.
Yes.
Unpack that.
Last chapter of The Wealth Money Can't Buy, which is whether you get to live 100 years or a few more days. Most of us don't know. I think that's what the pandemic has taught us, that life can turn in a day. And that's why you see, what do they call it, revenge travel. All these people who said, I'll go to Rome, I'll learn to surf, I'll see the Eiffel Tower, I'll swim with the dolphins in Mauritius sometime in the future. They realize we better do it now.
So in some respects, that's a hidden positive of the pandemic, to give people that perspective.
Absolutely. Work has changed. People have changed. I mean, the world is fundamentally different, I believe, now than it was 4 years ago. And one of the positives is, you're right, people are less willing to postpone living fully. I think even now we hug our family a little closer. We tell people we love them a little more often, and we're less willing not to take the risks that are important. So that last chapter of the book is live fully so you can die empty. And I use the quote of George Bernard Shaw, who said something to the effect of, I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, not some annoying little clod of grievances and excuses, hoping the world will make my life amazing. And I think that's a really great way to live, to be so used up when you die that you've given everything and you're like a smoldering pile of ashes because you've gone full out. And I think that's really just a great way to live, versus dead person walking
Holding
through
back.
life. Yeah, holding back.
There's a psychologist, Tom Gilovich, and he did this really interesting study where he interviewed a lot of people that were close to death, and he was interested in what's driving regret. What is leading to dissatisfaction at the end of someone's life? And he was able to see that the majority of regret that people had at the very end of their life was driven not by taking action. It was driven by inaction. And it was people not acting in a way that would step them closer to their ideal self, to who they wanted to become. Not inaction towards like society's obligations, the kind of ought self as he put it, but towards the ideal self. It was not doing that trip to Rome, not taking up that musical instrument, or learning to sing, or things like that, which I think just kind of comes back to this point you're making about squeezing the most out of life.
Yeah, that's very interesting. There was, I believe, I know you're from Australia. I believe there was an Australian hospice nurse who did some research or wrote a book about the regrets of the dying because she'd seen so many people close to the end. And a lot of their regrets were about the love that these people didn't give. In the book, there's a story about that. There's these two brothers, and they had a fight when they were younger. And they spent decades not even talking to each other because of this fight. And as time went on, Simon, they forgot what the fight was about. And then one of the brothers became sick. And so he was in a hospital room. And his other brother decided to go visit him. And the other brother walks in, and this gentleman who was in bed sees this brother, and they embraced. The brother walked in with, I believe it was a box of chocolates. And the dying brother said, I'm so angry at you. We lost all these years. We don't even know what it was about. And so they hugged each other and they made up. And then this gentleman actually died a few days later. And the point I'm trying to make is, at the end, it's the words left unspoken, the dreams left undone, and the kindness that we haven't shown.
That forgiveness.
And the forgiveness. And you said, I hope it doesn't sound morbid. I mean, I think talking about death is inspirational. I think people get so scared about death, but if we could build fluency with our mortality and make it a part of our ritual every day, just write about it in the most positive way. Life is short. Here's what I want to do. Let me not hold back today, etc. Then we'd go out in the world and we would do amazing things. We'd be more productive versus playing with our digital devices. We'd work to the point. We'd go home. We'd remember. With kids, you have a little window of opportunity. Spend time with them. With our significant others, give them the love. Be there for them. If we realize tomorrow might be our last day, we talk to the gardener I mentioned and ask.
Remember, we're alive.
What a concept. Remember the fragility of life and then savor how beautiful a human life is.